efficiency by Joan. So, supports equal opportunities, great, of course, we've got that ranking highest. 2, speaks up against bias, we'll come on to that, like the biases that we don't even know we're aware of sometimes. 3, respects and values differences. And 4, listens and learns from others. So the audience looks like the most important quality they think is supports equal opportunities. Does the panel agree with that or disagree with that? Over to you, Zoe.
Yes, I certainly agree with that. Out of the 4 options, in our business we have a massive amount of equal opportunity, particularly for women in our industry. If we look at our key accounts sales team, we've got 50% of those are women. Heading up our IT and econ team, we've got a lady doing that. Our bill and tender team, again, 50% of those are women. And, you know, we're in an industry where it is varied and, you know, sometimes it is probably a very white male-dominated industry in the electrical industry, and it's something that we've certainly got to look to change. And yeah, it's a massive thing for us, and I think for the whole industry in general, you know, it's certainly probably the key thing to start moving on.
Thank you, Paul. Mark, I'd like you to answer that, but I'd also like to address this question to you, kind of about, we should probably start with like the definition of allyship. This term ally gets used a lot, but what does it actually look like in the construction industry? How do we know when it's real versus performative, if it's box ticking?
Thanks, Helen. I think we definitely need male allies in the construction sector. We can see women are underrepresented in pretty much all roles. Our male allies can really help by providing that role model to other men in senior positions to demonstrate the fact that the industry, you know, we've got people shortages, we've got skills gaps. We desperately need more people in the industry. We need not just recruit, but stay in the industry. That's a really important critical bit. So we need to promote an inclusive culture. So male allies are very important in that. But I think there's caveats around it. And you know, we have seen over the last few years lots of people becoming very visible allies, and in some cases their motivation has been questioned. What we need to be careful of as male allies, and I should say as well, I wouldn't call myself a male ally. Okay. I don't think that's what we need to do.
Right.
That's, you know, if someone says that, thank you. But it's not, you know what I mean. No, it's not an accolade for me to just take. What we've seen is some people, in a sense, it can be dangerous if the motivation isn't right and if it's not done well. So there have been people who've stepped into leadership positions, male allies, who've taken that away from women, perhaps. So we have to be careful on that. The other thing to say with male allies is that we don't always understand the barriers that are there for women.
Yeah.
So we need to listen, and we need to give platform to women in particular, talking about gender to women. So that, in a sense, that would be my definition. I guess maybe the other thing is to not rely on women to educate us. We need to do our own education. It's not fair to put the burden on women to educate us. We need to take that responsibility ourselves. But so yes, allyship is a good, positive thing, but there are caveats there.
It's a really good point about the contention, isn't it? Zoe, you keep to jump in. And you were very keen to, you would happily call Mark an ally, right?
It's amazing, actually. I've worked with him quite a lot. I know we've worked on the EDI, don't we, together, but I think if we're going to remove performance measurement against allyship, I think it has to be the bedrock of everything we're doing as a business to start off with. I think with the way that we are as an industry, you know, we're already short on the skill shortage. We keep mentioning this already, don't we? But I mentioned to you before about the statistics on this. So there are, construction contributes annually 130 billion to the construction sector. And by 2030, that's going to be 13 trillion, but we're going to need more people.
Yeah.
And if to do that, we're going to have to attract more people.
Exactly, and that's exactly what it's going to make it more appealing.
Make it more appealing.
Gary, you think you jump in there?
Yes, I have. And actually, I'd really like to echo some remarks on this.
Yes.
And actually, I now feel, despite having created the Male Allies programme, I'm quite uncomfortable with the word ally, because I do worry that for some people the perception is that your job is just simply to, coach, mentor, support, train women and others that are traditionally underrepresented, but only under how to succeed in the current culture with the current values, aka often coaching them to kind of act like you, right? So act like a straight white man. And I think the ask is something broader than that.
Yeah.
And I think the ask is for anyone, because this is about all of us. Inclusion affects all of us. We all have a stake.
Yeah.
So I think our role as leaders is to coach, mentor, support, train, sponsor everyone on how to succeed in an inclusive culture. And that starts with turning the mirror on ourselves and saying, how do I show up for work every single day? Am I inclusive? Do I bring other people into conversations? Do I make sure all the quiet voices are heard? So I think it's a doing word. If we want to stick with allies, I actually think inclusion leaders are a better phrase, or maybe even accomplice. But literally, we are all in this together. All of us. We all have a stake, and we all have a need to participate.
I love that, and something you mentioned there is being that for other people. And we have a question here about privilege, like how can we do that? How can we be that person for other people? Allyship often means recognising and using privilege to open doors for others. And it's certainly something I've heard Michaela speak about a lot when we're talking about like female leadership, and at that level, yes, you want to go get ahead and make your career, make a name for yourself, but bring people with you. They're the type of female leaders and male leaders that we need as well. But the question is, how could people in positions of power in construction use their influence without speaking over those they want to support?
I think it starts with education first, and people being able to advocate for themselves. So, for example, with the boardroom, this should be a culture that, again, it's in your handbook, it's in the company recruitment policies.
Yeah.
It's a daily process and something that we do as a collective, not just as individuals. We have a tendency to isolate communities when we only focus on, one particular area. We've got examples. I want to use an example that's personal to me. 20 years ago, we went to a hen party, and there was one black friend out of 19 white girls. And the conversation got into the Gambia and other cultures. She did not advocate for herself, and she didn't feel strong enough or have the courage to do it. And not one of those other people, including myself at that time, did not speak up either. We were completely ignorant to why this might have affected her. Roll on 6 more hours later, fueled by alcohol, it was an absolute catastrophe. It was awful, and nobody at that point, it got beyond understanding anybody else's perspective. Had that been educated from an early, school, early years, school, it has to be something that is kind of transit and not something that we're trying to change learned behaviours when we get to become adults. So I would definitely say you've got to push forward on that as a collective together. Learning and leadership is inclusive of your employees and the people and friendship groups around you.
And actually, it really picks up on something Gary said about actually, we can point to management, we can point to companies and leadership to do their part. Absolutely, we need this, but we do also need like our own accountability. Who are we turning up as every day? How do we make a personal difference? Sure.
Grabbing the mic again. Which is a bit ironic. So I suppose 2 points really. One is in terms of privilege. Of course, the irony is that someone who, a white male like me, I can talk to other white men who are generally in positions of authority and power in the industry, and they won't, I've noticed that people will perhaps listen a bit more to me because I'm not seen to have be looking out for a personal advantage.
Right.
So, you know, and again, that irony that it's slightly easier for me perhaps to do my job and reach those people is not lost on me. But I think that's a fact, so use the privilege that I have.
Exactly.
I suppose the other sort of side of the coin is white men, if we're talking about gender, or if we're talking about race, we need to be careful not to fall into the trap of the saviour complex.
Right.
And you know, stand aside, everybody. Here I come. You know, that's kind of that. There's a danger there, and we need to be aware of that. And you know, listen. That's a key word. I see it came up first initially. I think that's a very important word.
I think the micro-affirmations work as well. You can do it very simply.
We'd all get better at listening, couldn't we? Gary, you're nodding, really agreeing with Margaret.
I feel really bad because I'm going to keep disagreeing with some of the words. Again, I don't like the word privilege. Not because I don't recognise that I have some, clearly, but I feel it's a word, when you use this word, it's a word that creates division. It kind of gets people's backs up and makes it feel a little bit defensive. So we often talk in terms of, let's say, relative advantage. There are all situations where we have a relative advantage in the conversation. My business partner, Mark, who's 6'4", talks about there are times when being 6'4" is really bloody helpful, right? And there are times being 5'4" is really, really unhelpful. But there are other situations where people from different groups with different identities also can have a relative advantage. So I think it's trying to recognise the places where we do have that and we use it in some way, and recognising that, you know, we need to bring others into conversations. But I just feel privilege is a little bit divisive, isn't it?
Yes. I'm updating my vocabulary with I really like that relative advantage. It says what it does on the tin as well, right? Okay, right. Next question. So phones at the ready. If I can work this. There we go. Oh my. Which subtle behaviour do you believe is the most damaging in workplaces? And the options you've got, hopefully they're coming up on your phones now. Interrupting or talking over colleagues, making assumptions based on gender, race or a role, excluding people from informal networks like after-work drinks. Michaela's very good at after-work drinks. And using jokes that reinforce stereotypes. Be brushed off lightly can actually cause, really hurt people, can't they? So, what have we got? What are we thinking here? Oh, making assumptions. Clear winner there. Clear winner. Yeah. Paul, what do you think about that? You agree with that or disagree with that?
I do agree with that. People do make assumptions based on gender, race or role. I very often see it in our workplaces that we go on sites and there may be a room and, again, the construction industry is a very male-dominated industry, and you'll go into a meeting room and it'll be 6 or 7 guys and one lady, and the last lady to go off and make the teas. And it's not right, but it happens, and we've got to change that. And it happens all over the place. There's so many stereotypes. We've just got to get over that. I think that us as leaders, as allies, we can stop that by putting ourselves forward before the assumption is made, and making people feel uncomfortable, feeling, like a little bit degraded by asking to make a tea, because they're in a room full of senior people, and it's a very difficult thing to say no. Can somebody else make the tea? And so people go along with it because they don't feel they've got the opportunity to speak up or defend themselves, and without knowing it, we've subconsciously made somebody feel downgraded or degraded.
Yeah, really echoes your story there. So
if we have regular CPDs, we have regular after-work twilight sessions, just giving people a platform and a voice to talk from their perspective, to educate themselves all the more. I think that's where real change will come, and the buddy system will come. You'll have a voice, and again, without being showmanship, you will give those positive affirmations in support that don't sound like you're being aggressive towards an opinion.
Yeah. Please, Gary.
This is going to sound awful. I'm going to plug my own book here. Is that all right?
Go for it. Go for it.
So you mentioned I co-founded the Male Allies program at JP Morgan. During COVID, trying to set up my own consultancy, worst time in business history to try and set up your own consultancy, I had a bit of book time, so I wrote a book on this subject. It's called The Accidental Sexist. It's available on Amazon.
That's a great title.
And it came from a research from one of my co-authors. She did a 3-year research program at Cambridge University in the perspectives of men and women in the workplace.
Wow.
And she found 16 specific things that kind of created barrier for women's careers.
Wow.
And it's not like they don't happen to men, they just don't happen as much.
Okay.
Right? And
Yeah.
the type of examples that we were already calling out, being asked to do the admin, having your competency doubted, not being heard in meetings, being interrupted more,
Yeah.
all the things that are described here.
Yeah.
And everyone talks about that as being unconscious bias or microaggression. Again, I'm back to words here. We found by calling it accidental sexism, it's a better route to a conversation.
Yes.
Because frankly, we all make these mistakes. All of us. None of us are perfect, but we are mostly well-intentioned.
Yeah.
We're trying to do the right thing, but sometimes we will get it wrong. And the culture we want to build is a culture in which it's kind of okay to get it wrong if you're trying to do the right thing, but you've got to learn from it, right? You've got to say, I will do better next time. So once you realize these things are happening, then you can begin to have conversations about, so how do we fix it? And to give you one example, and we've run some research on this, if you ask men and women, do you struggle to get your voice heard in group situations? 62% of men will say never or rarely.
Wow.
Only 31%
Wow.
of women will say
Wow.
never or rarely. So
Wow.
clearly quite a sizable difference.
Right.
However, when you solve that for your company, and this exists in every single company, I would argue, and everyone we've worked with,
Yeah.
you not only solve this problem, which isn't that hard to solve, by the way, for nearly 70% of the women in your organisation, you also solve it for 40% of the men in your
men.
organisation
Wow.
who also don't feel they're being
Wow.
heard.
Yeah.
So this, to me, is back to
Win-win.
the earlier question, what's inclusion about? What's being an
Yes.
ally about? It's solving career problems that can help everyone.
That's a really beautiful example of how an action is actually helping everybody. That's win-win. Paul, you wanted to add
Yeah,
something?
just basically following on from what Zoe said about women being mistreated in the industry. You know, if I look at an example of my wife, you know, she worked in the industry for 16 years. She worked for a company. She was UK salesperson for that company. She moved to another one. First year she was UK Salesperson of the Year. Second
Wow.
year she was Worldwide Salesperson of the Year.
Wow.
She came to an exhibition very similar to this. And bearing in mind she was the Worldwide Salesperson of the Year, she said to her manager, "What do you want me to do on the stand today?" And he said, "Your job is just stand there and look pretty." And bearing in mind, like I say, she built herself up over 16 years to this situation, and you know, she was absolutely demoralised to say, I've built myself up to be the best salesperson you've got in the world, and I come to an exhibition to sell the business, and I've just got to stand there and look pretty, and that's my role in selling the business for that day. And it just shows you how far we have come in certain ways, but this is only 2 years ago, and how far we've still got to come.
Wow, only 2 years ago. And that's an example of like those jokes like that would reinforce the stereotypes. And it might have been a joke, but it's just ouch, like exactly how degrading. Wow, ouch. So we have a panel on mental health coming up, so we're going to go into that topic a lot more. But a quick question on that. Because being an ally isn't just about gender or ethnicity. How can allyship extend to supporting colleagues with mental health challenges? I mean, Zoe, you even mentioned like neurodiversity in there. Because in this sector, there's still a lot of stigma, isn't there, about mental health and about differences. How can we kind of extend our efforts towards that as well?
Allyship does forge it creates psychological safety.
Yes.
And if we can create businesses that are safe, people feel valued, we're going to attract more people to come in, and then the word spreads. The thing is, we're very good at speaking internally and not maybe translating that message or communicating it externally to the wider world. I think you have to be in it to know we're doing the right thing, rather than having to be attracting people in. Just want to give you some more statistics here. I love statistics, you might know.
Go for it, me too.
So 81% of people say if they have an ally or a mentor, they're much likely to achieve the goals.
Wow.
And also 20% of businesses who have allies within the business are also seeing 20% less turnover of staff. I mean, that's not just statistics. That's actually a call to action to anybody that's not fulfilling those obligations.
So better retention, and actually if your employees are being more productive, they're happier, they're getting the reward, then that directly translates into the retention.
And it supports,
better for the company.
it supports mental health, because nothing creates mental health more than isolation, you know, and loneliness.
Mark, do you have
Thanks.
something?
I'll just quickly back up what Zoe was saying there with more facts, more depressing facts really. I mean, we know on average 2 lives are lost every day in the construction sector to suicide. CIOB recently conducted a report on mental health and well-being in the sector, and we've quite shocking findings really. It was a rerun of a report and a survey we ran in 2019. We found that nothing has changed, and in some areas it's gone backwards. We know from our survey that 27% of those who responded had suicidal thoughts in the last year, which I think is an astonishing statistic. It's a terrible one.
Yeah.
Allyship, it extends to, of course, people's mental well-being. I'll just give a quick plug to our initiative, CIOB.
Yes.
We're distributing Need to Talk stickers. They're designed to go on site in toilets, in lockers, where people won't find stigma, so they could. It's not in the canteen. It's somewhere private. People can get instant support. With support from the industry, we've now distributed 23,000 stickers.
Wow!
Right?
Bravo.
I mean, I say that because we have had fantastic support on this from the people who are putting buildings on sites, the temporary accommodation, people like Wernick Kaya who deserve credit. But the allyship on mental health, mental well-being is absolutely critical for everyone. And to echo a point that Gary just made, inclusion is for everybody.
Yes.
We know that this suicide predominantly, not exclusively, but predominantly affects white male over a certain age. We need to affect change and save people's lives on this. Allyship can save people's lives.
Yes, yeah. As I say, there's a panel coming up. I think it's 2:30, but Michaela and the ladies can tell you exactly what time it is. That's going to go into more about mental health and a lot of personal stories. So it's really, really, if that's something that is relevant to you, you're interested in, please come back at 2:30 for that. I'm going to grab a last mentee question for you, which is, if you've got your phones ready, how can people in positions of power best use their, well, we don't like privilege, relative advantage, we're going to call it, to support others? So just recapping a bit, but it'd be really interesting to see what you think about this. So your options are recommending colleagues for new opportunities, calling out bias, sharing credit for others' work, or offering support and advice. Okay, the front runner very clearly calling out bias. So actually having that bravery that we've talked about a couple of times to advocate for yourself, but when you see it, actually call it out. I love that. 7 people. That's got the biggest number. That's great. Lovely. Thank you. Thank you for your interactivity. We love that. Right, we have a final question. We're looking to the future now. So if we look ahead 10 years, what would a true ally-driven construction industry look like? And what steps do we need now to take to get there? Because Zoe, you mentioned, like, we have made, you know, it's talked about, there has been real progress. But what does that next version of this look like? Mark?
I'll go. I guess in 10 years, what we would like to see is a construction sector, built environment sector that is representative, that is welcoming to all, that is inclusive.
Yeah.
That is recruiting people from all backgrounds into the sector to fill those skills gaps, fill the people shortages, and has workplace culture that is inclusive and retains people. That is key. We need to retain people. I'm going to do a quick plug now. Forgive me. The CIOB, we have a diversity and inclusion charter. 5 simple steps. We've got nearly 400 companies signed up now, actually. It's international.
Wow.
And we have support for those companies in getting there and delivering, embedding inclusive workplace practices. So there is help. Other charters are available, of course, but I'm going to plug the CIOB one. If you're interested, please come and talk to the CIOB stand there or get in touch with me, sign up and become part of the conversation. No one's cracked it. No one is perfect. We can always do better on this, but together it's much easier than doing it on your own. So sign up. Thank you.
That's a lovely phrase, definitely to take away, isn't it? Together is better. You get there faster. What is it? If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go further, go together. Something like that. I probably massacred that phrase. But you know what I mean. You know what I mean. Go on, Zoe.
I'd like to see in 10 years that actually we're not talking about it.
Yes.
I'd like to see that it's just become so normalised that it's not a topic that we need to keep pushing on.
Yeah.
You know, it's embedded into our processes again. You know, we do the CPDs, we've done all of that, and people come into our industry knowing that we are really an inclusive. We're not talking about the EDI. You know, advancement is, again, that collaboration piece and working together.
And it's not a tick box exercise, as we talked about at the beginning, Mark.
No tolerance now. If we show no tolerance and no mercy now to poor behaviours, people will just learn and it'll be kind of accepted when they do enter.
Yeah. Gary?
I'm going to both agree and disagree with Zoe here. So I agree it'd be great if we're no longer talking about the subject in quite the same way. And I think also, I don't think we're seeking perfection, because we'll never get there.
True.
But I do think we're seeking balance, and I do feel it's important for every sector to have people represented in some way. I want balance in people that make decisions that affect my life.
Yes.
Right? I want those diverse opinions.
Yeah.
I think we need it everywhere. I think this is a culture change that's fundamental, and it will never be done, if I'm honest. So the way I'm slightly disagreeing is maybe we're using different terms, but I think we still need to continuously improve culture.
Yeah.
I do think that's our job. That's our job as leaders.
Yeah.
And one of the things I'd say, going back to this question about what leaders can do, what allies can do, whether we call them or not, I think one of the most important things is to create psychological safety is openly tell other people that when I get it wrong, you have my explicit permission to call me out, to tell me, right? Because I will get it wrong, and only if you tell me will I know that I can do something about it and get better at it. I think we've all got to get ready about being wrong more. It's really difficult in leadership to say, I don't know, I get it wrong sometimes too, and have a culture where that's okay, because you can have a sensible conversation about it.
So give them the permission.
Absolutely.
Yeah, love that. Paul?
Yeah, just to agree on that, really. We have a bit of a saying in our business that there isn't anything called criticism. So people can come and effectively criticise me, but we don't see it as criticism. We see it as an opportunity to help somebody to become better. And so, we always say, no one's ever criticised me, but what they've done is give me advice on how I can be better next time. So we sort of don't take it in a negative way, we take it in a positive way, and that way you come out a little bit better. I think, moving forward 10 years, I think we have to also not be too hard on ourselves and look at where we've come in the last 10 years or 20 years. I've been in this industry now, in the construction industry, for over 20 years, for 26 years, and, people probably find it hard to believe now. But my first nickname when I first joined the construction industry was Chalky, which was based on those old enough, was the Jim Davidson character.
Wow.
But at that time, it was in the 90s, and it was just accepted that was my nickname coming into the industry. For us now, if somebody came in of colour and that was a nickname given to them, we'd be absolutely horrified, and it wouldn't be accepted. And so I think that we've also got to give ourselves credit for where we've come from and where we've got to, which gives us great confidence of where we can get to in the next 10 years. I look at myself in my position. I came from a massively underprivileged family. We had no money, and I grew up in St Albans, which was, there weren't many people of colour in St Albans in the 70s when I was growing up. And I've come into my industry and now in the electrical industry now, and there's 4 major electrical wholesalers, and I'm probably, as far as I know, and I know people in most of them, the only person of colour at any senior level in any of those 4 businesses. And so it's a case that we've got to keep fighting on and keep pushing and making sure that people can look at
other people from minority backgrounds and go, do you know what? I can do that. And
Yes.
look at people and say, there's too many people now saying, that's never going to happen to me. I'll never make it to that. And it doesn't matter who you are. The world has changed, and if you're prepared to fight your way and get good allies and get good support and guidance, anyone can get to it. And like I say, so in a pretty short space of time, I've gone from being called chalky to now heading up a business which is turning over £2 billion a year.
Wow.
And it's you know, it's for me now to push that message down to the people that work for us and say, there's nothing off the table. You know, we've come this far in a short space of time, and the guys starting out in their careers who are in their late teens, early 20s, another 20 years, they'll be at the same situation I'm in, and all of the things we're talking about now just won't even be conversation pieces anymore. And so the fantastic thing is, like I say, we've come a long way. We've still got a long way to go, but I'm pretty confident that the way we're moving forward and we're actually talking about it and tackling it, we will get to where we need to be.
Yeah, and it's about visibility, as you say, isn't it? It's like if you can see it, you can be it, and that's really, really, really important.
I just
Zoe.
wanted to add, you know, our industry, we base success on time, cost, quality, but it isn't like the real measurement and the real metric is human performance.
Uh-huh.
And I think the more we invest in our people, the more we're going to just, you know, we're going to literally support our industry all the more. It's not about, you know, the encouragement of like the role models, the allyship and the mentors. That's how businesses are going to succeed. The ones who don't will lose their employees. They're going, you know, they will start to fail. And we've seen plenty of that already, haven't we?
Absolutely, and yeah, another challenge. And as you say, with the stats you shared earlier, from 130 billion to we're going to go into trillions, and we've already got challenges with skills gaps, then it becomes even more important. Right, we are getting towards the end of our allocated slot, so I'm hoping there are some juicy questions from the audience. Who has one they would like to address to the panel in general or somebody specific? This is where you advocate for yourself and you put your hand up and you ask what you're scared to ask. Go for it. Somebody must have a question. No? Okay. I'll ask the panel one more while you can have a quick think. So it's related to kind of the last question, but accountability and metrics. If we say if allyship is everyone's responsibility, how do we measure it?
Can I tell a quick story on this?
Please do.
So I think where we've gone slightly wrong with this is we've focused on measuring diversity. I mean, it's not an unimportant thing to know where you are as a company,
Yeah.
but I think we possibly over-indexed on it in some ways. So I think if we can find ways of measuring inclusion, I think that's a much better approach. And it's much more difficult, to be fair.
Right.
So two quick things. Number one, and I would say this, we've just gone into partnership with a company that actually has a tool that helps you try to measure how inclusive you are.
Wow.
It's a sort of self-development tool.
Wow.
So it basically asks the type of questions you should ask if you want to find out whether you're inclusive or not.
Wow.
And then gives you some 360-degree feedback and gives you the things that you need to work on to be more inclusive. So I think that's quite a nice approach.
Amazing, yeah.
So that's at an individual level.
Uh-huh.
At a company level, I'm going to tell a story. There's a technology company, this is probably about 5 or 6 years ago, and I still don't know if they still do this. One of the things they did is they basically came up with a list of leadership behaviours and values, and they asked everyone in the company to vote for their favourites, from which they extracted six leadership values that we expect everyone in leadership to kind of live up to.
Uh-huh.
And then they basically asked anyone in a managerial position, they were ranked on those behaviours, right? By their staff, by the people above them, by all of their peers. They had a 360-degree view of how much they embodied the leadership values.
Wow.
And then they did two really interesting things. The first thing they did is they made all of those scores publicly visible to everybody in the company.
Wow.
So you could see how all of your leaders were doing on these empathy values. And the second thing they did is they directly linked it to compensation.
Wow.
And they said, 2/3 of your compensation will be based around how well you achieve your objectives, and the other third will be based on your relative scoring on our leadership behaviours.
Wow.
So I kind of think, I don't know, that's quite drastic, but at least to affect change, to actually live behaviours,
Yeah.
I kind of quite liked it. And the guy I spoke to was their European sales director, And he was saying one of the ways I try to demonstrate my focus on inclusion is I run an inclusion workshop every single month. It's a whole half day, but I turn up every time to help build an inclusive culture. That's how I signal my commitment to this topic.
Wow. That makes me think that can work really well, but it could also, like Mark talked about earlier, you could see some people ticking boxes, but, I mean, I suppose you've got to suck it and see, for want of a better phrase.
Yeah, I'm kind of struggling a little bit with that, because again, we're going to be creating monsters with egos if it's going to be performance measured in that respect. I think if it came into your employment and as part of your remit, you were invited to, host an event or be allocated a day per year or per month to deliver a workshop or include an inclusive environment where it's an education piece and we continue that momentum with the education, not trying to do as a me, oh look what I did. And that's where it can become very difficult if we start measuring on performance and compensating in a monetary form even.
Really, really interesting one to think about. I wish we had a Menti score on that. Mark, is allyship everyone's responsibility?
Yeah, I'm going to maybe disagree with previous speakers. I'm not sure that it is. Because, I think embedding inclusive practices is everyone's responsibility.
Yeah.
But allyship, by definition, is for those of us who have relative advantage. I like it.
Yes.
It's for those of us who are in that position to help, help address the barriers that are there for those who don't. So I wouldn't agree that allyship is for everybody. And in terms of accountability, I do think data is important, and I do think we need organisations and the sector needs to know where underrepresentation is so that we can identify the barriers to address that underrepresentation. We shouldn't adopt actions on the basis of assumptions, because that will end up in the wrong place. So data is important. It helps us measure progress against the targets that we set ourselves. So I don't innately see anything wrong with that. There are politicians who use EDI or inclusion as a punch bag to get votes for themselves, and they'll use the example of quotas, and which is a myth. Quotas are a myth outside of political. Looking at constituencies, we don't. EDI people do not advocate for quotas. We don't. Right. We do advocate for proportionate, representation for people in roles, which is what we want to see. In a healthy society, we want to see, and a healthy industry, we want to see people represented. Accountability, I would say, has to be, and this is part of the CIOB charter. There has to be someone senior who is accountable, because what we can't do is, with big I know most companies aren't in this position, but some companies are out there can afford to employ someone fairly junior in a role, diversity officer role, no money, no budget, no accountability, authority. They're not going to be able to change the culture of a company, right? Yes. So accountability has to sit in the exec level, I would argue.
Right. Lovely. Thank you all very much.